As I'm saying this all out loud, I'm just realizing the last like 10 minutes of what I've said would not be understood by a single adult that I know in my life outside of all of y'all. Maybe my partner, obviously Dave. Dave would know exactly what I'm talking about because he does the Serfs YouTube with me. Other than that, any other human being, any other rational human being would be like, what the fuck are you having a stroke, Lance? This makes absolutely no sense. I don't understand a word coming out of your mouth. The synthetic left, the peacocks coming down, Caleb Burger King, the tankies, the fakies. What are you saying? These are not real words. This is not a real sentence. The Pajama Boys are back.
When someone engages, and that's what we're doing here. We're going to have a discussion, a debate, and I give you props, and I give Fiorella props for doing it. And that's, you know, I always say that whether someone's a right winger or whatever, if you engage, you know, you go up a little bit in my book for sure. Just for doing that.
Well, good. I'm glad I went up a little bit in your book. And to be honest with you, I'm not crazy about some of the people that, I don't know if you necessarily work with them, but I think there's this kind of connection by association. I don't know what your work relationship is.
Wow, the comments are already pretty spicy. I don't know if I can let these run, because if they're going to get really intense, like some of them seem fine, you know. Boogaloo boys are progressive as fuck, if you didn't know that, Matt. Sounds like he's got the voice of a cuck. Sam Cedar left versus the left. America, you got so many different factions. You got so many factions in America. There's so many teams. It's hard to keep up, you know? There's so many different versions.
Is with Sam Cedar or Emma or whatnot. I am not crazy about those people, but I've always had like a little soft spot for Matt Bender, and I want to start off with apologizing for saying that you're nothing more than a keyboard warrior. I think that was wrong for me to do that. It was a little heated moment behind the keyboard myself. In fact, I think it was your work that you did on Kyle Rittenhouse that really persuaded me. I thought it was some excellent work you did that really persuaded me to say, hey, listen, I think that Mr. Kyle Rittenhouse is guilty of committing murder because with Matt Bender, no, I don't say Bender, Binder, right? No,
it's all right. Binder.
Binder. And wait, that's what it took? It took you trolling up a whole bunch of old information about him and all the fucked up shit he did and all the associations he had with other...
Jesus Christ. What Matt Binder pointed out, that Kyle Rittenhouse kind of brandished his weapons several times. He was also away from the place he was guarding. So that work you did, that long video you did, I was actually in North Georgia on assignment when I was watching, and I think you did some excellent work, and you actually persuaded me by your argument. So apologize for calling you a keyboard warrior. I think you, like I said...
Whoa. Why hasn't it worked on any other corner of the internet and anyone else that we deal with in these realms? Like, all right, I'm gonna.
For me, I hold you in a little higher standards than those other people. I don't know what you're.
Don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the heat and the, you know. So don't worry about it. It's all in good fun. So let's put that aside. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Also,
cool.
I appreciate your kind words about the Rittenhouse videos and reports I did, and hopefully I can persuade you on some other topics right here tonight.
You know what? I'm looking forward to us trying to persuade each other and see where we end up at the end of this whole thing. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, Fiorella will be coming on for the second half. In fact, I'm going to read the text message I sent to Matt today, and it said, Matt, how about the first part? Me and you, we talk about, is there a line that can be crossed as pertaining to who we should build bridges with, like the Boogaloo Boys, because that's where our argument started. And then we should also digress back to the Jimmy and Sam thing. Who was right? Should we settle for the lesser of two evils? And then later on, you're going to debate with Fiorella about are the squad allies, and did Nina turn a blind eye to the Medicare for All march? And did it cost her the election? Obviously, you made a video criticizing Fiorella's points on what Nina did. So that's what we have in store for today. And I'm glad we can do that. And just for the record, so you know, Matt, I don't know if you know, I don't work for Jimmy Dore. I'm not associated with Jimmy Dore.
No.
I am a dirtbag leftist. You can call me a dirtbag leftist with the Daily Beast called me and stuff. We were in the same article, but once again, we might align on a lot of things, but I don't work for him. And I think that despite where or who you work for, I always said...
Okay, this looks adorable. I just need to know what it means, because if it's gonna be like at the F slur or something, like what does it say? I can't read kanji, so what does it say in Japanese on Nintendo? It says Nico Lance, the Serfs, Cat Lance. Okay, here you go, everybody. Yeah, see, I do love fan art. It does warm my heart. I love surf memes. So that is wonderful. Thank you.
That Matt has his own opinions, and that's why I'm looking forward to.
Thank you, Nintendo.
Besides that one topic where we're going to be obviously talking about Jimmy Dore and Sam Cedar, I have no intention of bringing up anyone else's views and putting them on either you or.
That's a good point, Kubri.
About what you guys have espoused and said, and what I have espoused and said.
Cool. So thank you to everybody who jumped into the Rockfin today on the YouTube. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Matt, are you streaming from anywhere that people should know about?
I am not. I decided let's keep it on one chat. Afterwards, I'll put it on my channel for my viewers if they didn't know this was going on, the replay. But live, we're here on your channel, but people can check me out, youtube.com/Matt Binder. Subscribe there now. I do a live show at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, and I put up videos throughout the week too.
Cool. Well, maybe if we have another debate, we can do it on your channel next time. So it'll be even, like, football games, home and away. Okay, do you want to start off with the first 2 minutes, or do you want me to kind of go into the first 2 minutes about where my thoughts are? Because I think I should probably start off, give you a little bit of advantage to hear where I'm coming from, and then we can go from there. Does that sound good?
Yeah, why don't you kick it off and get us started?
So once again, I think we were talking about, is there a line to draw in the sand from who we should talk to and who we shouldn't talk to? I remember when we were kind of going back and forth, you had mentioned to me, and you'd say, is it okay to talk to Nazis or something, right? Was that something you said to me, or?
Right, I think it was I said the KKK. Right.
The KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. And I think that me personally, that we have a little difference of opinion when we look at things at the big spectrum. I'm not saying that you wouldn't recognize power in corporations, but it seems to me that when we do have our disagreements, that you pay attention to left versus right, and a guy like me will pay attention to more up versus down. Would you say that's a fair assessment, or no?
I mean, we can go with it, and we could get more into that in a little bit. But we could say that's the case for now, just so we can get started here.
Okay. So the reason why I believe that we should talk to everybody is, once again, and I was quoted in the Daily Beast article when I was out there in the streets, and I said, listen, when I saw Boogaloo Boys, in this particular case, it was Black Lives Matter and Proud Boys fighting with each other, and the quote that was given, that was quoted by Daily Beast about me was like, hey guys, you need to stop this. You have more in common than the people who are controlling us upstairs. And that's where we might have a little bit of a difference, because right now I don't feel like when we vote for the lesser of two evils, and I think that is a failed, flawed strategy, because we're no longer kind of fighting for incremental gains. We're more or less fighting for holding on to incremental losses. In other words, we say, okay, Joe Biden, he might be not as bad as Trump, but he's not going to give us anything we want. In fact, we're voting for him. In fact, if we do decide to vote for him, the fact that he won't do as many bad things as Donald Trump. And I feel that's a failed, flawed, once again, strategy, because when we do elect these people like a Barack Obama, they tend to do way more damage because they're under the protection of being blue no matter who, a Democrat, whatnot, and they can cause more damage. For instance, Obama increased militarism by almost 2,400%. You know what I'm saying? He literally militarized the police. He brought all that military grade home from Iraq, put it into the hands of our policemen, and who suffered more by that, right? People of color, under the commands of the police department. Also, he did another thing. Everybody says he wasn't as bad as George Bush because George Bush committed American troops. Obama brought them home, but then he increased drone warfare, which then again killed twice as many innocent people across seas, not even militants, than before. So for me, I think it's really wrong when we play this lesser of two evils situation, and we kind of put these people above everybody else, these people on the left over people on the right, because it comes back to bite us in the ass, and we're getting nothing we want. Now, as far as talking to actual voters and people out in the street, to me, there's a big difference between, for instance, a person like AOC or Kamala Harris or Joe Biden who will actually legislate racist policies, as opposed to some dude from the South who wears a Donald Trump hat, who will use the N-word all the time, whatnot. He has no power. You know what I'm saying? And I think there's a big difference with trying to build allegiances with people, trying to convince them that their racism is wrong and try to persuade them because they are people of no power, than dealing with people like AOC, like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who are going to legislate some of the most racist, harmful things in the world. So that's my opening. You can give me your shtick on that and where you feel when it comes to that situation.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say I agree with you for sticking with the fact that obviously politicians have power, and the average citizen does not, and we should be looking to organize with people, with working people across the political spectrum, with people across no matter what their race is, what their religion is, their gender, whatever. We should be working together to create a better world for everybody, of course. But where I don't even draw the line when it comes to talking with someone, and this is sort of where our whole discussion I think is based on, especially when you sparked this debate by bringing up my Boogaloo Boy video, which just to bring up his name because that's where this all came from. Yeah. Jimmy Dore had a Boogaloo Boy on his show. And that's what made me create this video, sort of warning people about the various things that were talked about in that interview with Jimmy Dore and that Boogaloo Boy. I believe his name is Magnus. You've had him on the Convo couch.
He's a friend of mine, Magnus Panvidia. Yes.
Right. Now, here's my thing. Now, I don't have a problem with you or Jimmy Dore or anyone really having on Magnus Panvidya to talk with him, to have a debate with him, to have a discussion with him, to try to understand where he's coming from and, knock down some of his more, like you brought up before, not so great, maybe racist, maybe other ways which might not line up with your views, and try to make him understand. But when
This is hard to adjust the audio because the audio is so scuffed on the Convo couch. I don't know if this is a debate tactic, but his volume is so loud and distorting, and Matt Binder's is very, very quiet, so I keep having to go back and forth. I'm trying my best, Chad.
I saw the Jimmy Dore interview, and I did watch one time he was on your show. That's not really what I see Dore or you guys do. It really is just like a fun little chit chat with Magnus Panvidya, so he can share and spread his Boogaloo Boy beliefs. And it really seems like they go unchallenged whenever he's on your show, when he was on Jimmy Dore's show. I mean, I saw Jimmy Dore basically go, goo goo gaga over this guy saying things that sounded maybe slightly leftist to him, but in the bigger picture, really isn't. Because sure, there are some areas where you guys have the same goals, but not, you want something immediate, you want to take down the state, for example. But what he wants in the end game is totally different from what, someone who is like a left-leaning anarchist would want if that was their end game.
How do you know that though? I just want to know how. Yeah, because you've never talked to Magnus, right? And
I've never talked to Magnus, and if he reached out to me, I would be glad to have a discussion with him.
Really? That would be interesting. Remember when Jimmy Dore called Magnus Panvidya the next Fred Hampton? Did he say that? He didn't actually say you're the next Fred Hampton. He probably said something like it harkens to you give me like vibes of like a leader of the Black Panthers or something. He said that. Oh. But what the fuck, Jimmy Dore? That's a really fucked up thing to say. That's a goddamn Boogaloo boy.
Like I said, I always love to engage, but he's never reached out to me. Someone made me aware that he did create some sort of a video response to me. This was like yesterday, so I just caught a little bit of it. I don't want to talk about that now because he's not here to defend that. But from what I've seen of Magnus, but let me ask you something. What would you say is the main tenet of being, a leftist? Obviously, there's various other, anti-imperialism, anti-racism, but overall, anyone who is on the left, where they consider themselves to be a socialist, a communist, or a left-leaning anarchist, there is one thing they want to do. What would you say that is?
Well, I mean, I think that would center more around labor, right? That's the main thing. For me, being a leftist, it's about, seizing the means of production. It's about actually creating a labor force where people can, obviously have a decent standard of living. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's the thing
And to do that, the ultimate end goal is to dismantle the capitalist system, correct?
I don't think it's necessarily the capitalist system. I think it's more the imperialistic, oligarchic system. I don't know the answer to where we're going.
This is actually fascinating, okay? I've wondered this for a long time. What are the key things separating the imperialist or the anti-imperialist left, the synthetic left, the bread tube left? But Matt is actually hitting on a very, very key point here, and this is one that I thought of. If you are like trying to identify someone as a leftist, what is ultimately what you're trying to do? Well, you're trying to improve the conditions of the workers, right? That's probably something that's very easy and universal. Even if you are the ones who aren't anti-imperialist enough, they say you're a little too sock demi, all right? You're not quite against the empire. You're fine with the US having that 800 military bases, but you want healthcare at home, and you want people to have free public university education, and you want a lot of sock dem things like they have in the Nordic countries. That's what you want. Okay, fine. But then there's the imperialist left, right? Sorry, the anti-imperialist left. The ones who want to form this benevolent union with the nation states of Russia and of Syria. And of course, some of them will not endorse Bashar al-Assad. They might say that he is a little bit of a baddie, but at the same time, U.S. imperialism, the ultimate evil of all history. So this is why we have to unite and band against that. So we're not technically just for the workers. We're for we like the workers. But it's about ending the oligarchs and the globalists. I think that might be the key distinction between the two. I'm hoping Matt will be able to get out of him what are the oligarchs and what are the globalists. Because if you were to ask me, if someone came to me and was like, yeah, okay, Lance, who are all these people who control all the levers of power? I'd be like, well, it's actually really boring. We have quite a bit of information on who the richest human beings on the planet are. Not only the richest people, but the richest corporations. In a lot of cases, the richest corporations actually have more money than actual countries themselves, which means all the collective taxes pooled together by individuals who live within these countries don't amass as much wealth as this company is capable of amassing through their own means for a handful of reasons. I'm not going to get into those details, but if you would like to have a list of the top 100 richest human beings on the planet, here they are. If you would like to have a list of the top 1,000 richest companies in the planet, here they are. It's not exciting. It's very boring. It kind of shows you how well and easy it is to allow wealth to concentrate into the hands of the very few under our current economic system. That would kind of be my way of taking it. I haven't once mentioned tankies. Okay, I'm talking about two distinct groups. The group that the Convo couch is kind of representing is in this whole ecosystem of, and so far that I've identified, gray zone. Now they're kind of ancillary to Jimmy Dore as well, and it's this whole and like the March for Medicare for All had a lot of actors in that. They're smaller. It's like any other big environment, right? Like people like to dictate BreadTube as being kind of like the champagne socialists. Fine. The idea behind that is that you have this rich country club of like 5 or 6 creators. All of them make something like $20,000 to $50,000 a month on Patreon. They get to make 1 or 2. Maybe 3 or 4 months they put out a video, and it's incredible and it's amazing and it's a whole scene, and all of us have to sit back and be like, have you seen the new blank? Yeah, man, that was a good blank. Oh yeah, blank knocked. They always do. Blank always knocks it out of the. It's always gold. They're so good. They're so good. I love them. That's the problem with BreadTube, right? So this one here is a combination between the Majority Report, aka the Peacocks, which are they're being called now. I mean, the left is weird, ain't it? It's a mess. It's a fucking. As I'm saying this all out loud, I'm just realizing the last like 10 minutes of what I've said would not be understood by a single adult that I know in my life outside of all of y'all. Maybe my partner, obviously Dave. Dave would know exactly what I'm talking about because he does the Serfs YouTube with me. Other than that, any other human being, any other rational human being would be like, what the fuck are you are you having a stroke, Lance? This makes absolutely no sense. I don't understand a word coming out of your mouth. The synthetic left, the peacocks coming down, Caleb Burger King, the tankies, the fakies. What are you saying? These are not real words. This is not a real sentence. Anyways, let's hope that Matt is able to separate that distinction. So here we are.
Going to be. I in fact think we should have some form of a mixed economy. You know what I'm saying? That's me personally, a little socialism, a little communism, a little capitalism, and figure something out. My main thing is that we eliminate the elitism, because that's the first thing that needs to be removed first. It's elitism. That's our number one problem, because elitism bleeds imperialism, which bleeds capitalism, which is the system that keeps imperialism in play, you know what I'm saying, which breeds separation across the board, you know what I'm saying? So for me personally, it's not about getting rid of just capitalism. I don't have those answers. I'd like to have them. Go ahead.
I'm actually a little bit surprised by your answer, because to get everything that I assumed that someone with your politics would want, and they're idealistically my politics too. The end goal seems to be that we have to dismantle the capitalist system, because you're talking about elitism, right? But who creates the elites? You seem to be coming at it where you think that government is the one in charge.
Yeah, a couple, a couple.
They're really not. I mean, I
don't think government's in charge. I think the elites are in charge of government, which are in charge of capitalism.
Well,
Well, I mean, elitism, I mean, I don't even, I have very mixed views. I'm an independent thinker, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, me personally, with everything going on, I don't even think nation states pull the strings right now as much as the elites and these corporations and these people who have so much influence on governments around the world. So, I mean, it's...
So you'll see why, like, this side of the aisle, this would sound very conspiratorial to a normie, right? Like, if a normie's watching this right now, your mom and pop, maybe they voted for Obama. They're just kind of fence sitters, not entirely sure what's going on. When you hear someone saying like the elites control the levers of power, I mean, if he's trying to say that very, very rich people can utilize more capital to use influence on the world, I mean, that much is true. And then large corporations will form lobbying groups, which they use to influence politics, and they do so very successfully. That is also true. I think it's kind of more just these kind of like nebulous sounding terms that weird people out. It's just a little bit of the oof. Yeah, it sounds scary. What he's saying right now, I don't like it. It sounds scary.
It's not just about eliminating capitalism, because if we eliminate capitalism, who else is going to take the reins? Another set of elites. You know what I'm saying? My whole ideology, Matt, is like we get rid of these assholes, and then we can all get in a room.
What do you think capitalism is? Does he actually think capitalism is like a monarchy? He's like, well, capitalism is what keeps the elites in power because the money gives them the power. So because they have the power, they have the money. So with that, they're going to do that. But if we get rid of capitalism, well, then someone else is going to come and get the money. It'll be a different system, and then the elites will come right back
And decide what's best for us all. It's not just about eliminating capitalism, because that won't solve the problem. Who's pulling the strings of capitalism? That's the issue for me. So.
Right, but capitalism is set up where there'll always be these elites in charge. If it's not the current elites, it's the next generation of elites. I mean, that's how it works.
I mean, that also happens in systems of communism and systems of socialism, right? It does happen too as well, where elites can control any ism that you're into. In my personal opinion, if elites can separate us and control it, no matter what. So whatever you're into, it's about eliminating the power structure up top, and that's where I think we have a big difference.
That would be a great time for Matt just for funsies, just to play. Just to go out there and be like, what if there was no money? What if there was no profit incentive? I'm just curious. I just ask the question to see where that would go, and then just to see his answer. Like, I wonder how far that conversation would find. Like, what would be the eventual end?
The way we look at power, you might look at it systematically and saying we remove capitalism, we remove the problem. I say no, the problem's still there. It's elitism. It's always been a group of elites running things around the world, and that's just my personal opinion.
Right, but but we know what puts these elites there, and it's basically you have these billionaires, these major corporations who are basically calling the shots and they are the elites, and they're the ones who choose who the elites are, and essentially they choose, if not who our politicians are, many times they do, they certainly choose how our politicians vote.
Yeah. Authoritarianism is a big problem, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's also one of the big issues here and stuff. So, but let's get back to who we should talk to and who we shouldn't talk to and stuff.
Right. So I don't have a problem with you having Magnus Panvidia on your show. I just said he could come on mine if he'd like, and we just talk about things. But I just never see any pushback about who the Boogaloo Boys are and how they're founded and why we should be creating this alliance with a group of people who, at their core, were created on a racist forum, espousing racist views. I mean, the name of their organization, their group, their movement, whatever they'd like to call it. I know there's no centralized organization. It's just this group of people who call themselves Boogaloo Boys. But there's a place where this name came from.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that if you are against those things, you simply would not be a Boogaloo Boy. I mean, there's ways to show that you love your guns and you hate the police that don't require you to be a Boogaloo Boy. Because once you say you're a Boogaloo Boy, all that racist baggage that comes with it comes along with you, quite frankly, even if you claim to be a non-racist Boogaloo. Can I push back for a second, Matt, or do you have something more to say? No, go ahead.
Jimmy Dore is not the one who gave us the insight to the Boogaloo Boys. You know who we talked to about the Boogaloo Boys first? Black Lives Matter 757. Okay.
Robo Gaming, I'm Inuit, and seeing an igloo on the Boogaloo Boy flag pisses me off so much. Yeah, I can't imagine. I've seen a lot of people call that out online, and radio silence from the Boogaloo Boys on that one, but kind of to be expected.
That's who told us that they worked with the Boogaloo Boys first, that they came out and joined their rallies to stand with them. A group of Black Lives Matter people from Richmond, Virginia. Those are the ones who said, no, there's a misconception out there, like people, Matt, are putting out there about the Boogaloo Boys. The Boogaloo Boys are different than us when it comes to a lot of political issues, but for the most part, they're against what the government's doing, and they're against the working class of people. And that's why we stand with them and they stand with us. In fact, when we went out to Richmond, Virginia, we got to meet some of the members of Black Lives Matter 757 and interview them. There was a Boogaloo Boy there at that funeral. You know what I'm saying? One in particular, just one. So the bond that they formed, and at the end of the day, I mean, who should we honestly listen to, Matt? I mean, and I'm not trying to put you down. Some guy by the name of Matt who writes a story about them, who's done some investigating, he's seen some issues and whatnot, and he says, or people who have actually worked with people like Magnus Panvidia and the Boogaloo Boys. And these are Black Lives Matter. Well, this is a black man saying, no, we stand by the Boogaloo Boys because they've stood by us. So.
Well, as far as I know, BLM 757, I believe you said is their name.
Yep.
They've never worked with Magnus, as far as I know. They're based in Virginia, like you said.
Yep.
And Magnus is very straightforward about saying how you can't compare Michigan Boogaloo Boys to any other Boogaloo Boys around the world.
Jakari and Magnus have worked together. They've worked together. I mean, that's
well. Have you looked into BLM 757 because they have been basically banished from the national Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. That's my personal opinion.
Do you know why they've been banished from the national Black Lives Matter?
Well, what did you hear by it?
Well, the guy who runs the BLM 757 apparently has said some incredibly misogynistic things He apparently has espoused women's choice views.
Have you heard these things? I mean, because I haven't heard him say these things.
If I don't have them on, I didn't know we were going to bring up BLM 757, but I certainly have seen them online before when I've looked into that group, because I did find it weird that whenever we want to hear a positive spin on the Boogaloo Boys, there is just this one group who uses the Black Lives Matter movement name, BLM 757.
That is true. I have wondered that.
For the Boogaloo Boys in front and basically back them up. It's this one group that you are mentioning, and everyone else who says we should team up with the Boogaloo Boys. It's this one group that everyone seems to take their word for. Well, Boogaloo Boys being great.
Let me say this much. I don't say we should necessarily team up with them right now. I'm saying that it's the people versus the elites. That's always been my mindset. Let me just say this much. Go ahead. Good, man. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, don't worry. Magnus Panvidia has been very upfront about being an anarcho-capitalist. And I can't think of a more anti-leftist view than anarcho-capitalism. Anything you ever want as a leftist, it goes directly against what an ANCAP wants. An ANCAP literally wants to completely dismantle the state. So Medicare for all, Social Security, every good welfare program, every good social safety net program that the left actually holds up as, wow, this is actually shows this is what government can do when they do good.
Yeah.
Gone. And ANCAP wants to completely replace all of that with private enterprise. Police, private enterprise. The court system, they want insurance companies to run the court system through arbitration. If you are worried about elites, I can't think of any system that would bring about more powerful elites than anarcho-capitalism.
And that might be a fair argument, but once again, I think we're looking at this totally different, because if yourself, right?
Oh, wow, what a pivot. So I don't know what an ANCAP is, clearly, and you've given me a definition of an ANCAP that sounds weird and scary to me, and I don't want to hear any more of it. So, yeah, we're going to keep talking about something completely different.
So if you're a Democrat, do you agree with everything all the Democrats say at all time, or do you have places where you will disagree with them, right? You know what I'm saying? I think it's unfair to say, oh, it's an anarcho-capitalist. On every single issue, these people are going to agree exactly alike, and at the end of the game, this is what they want to do. I would beg to differ and say, if you talk to people like the Boogaloo Boys, if you talk to Magnus, they will agree with the same sentiment, is that we get rid of the elites, we get rid of the people of power, then we put ourselves in a room and we decide what's best for us. That's the mentality of the whole situation. But also, digressing back to Black Lives Matter, do you know how many groups Black Lives Matter have moved away from the National Black Lives Matter group?
Right, of course.
I mean, you know, right? So, I mean, we can't sit there and say that the National Black Lives Matter is this standing beacon of light, because they've also had very serious accusations about how they funneled money into the top organizers of Black Lives Matter and not distribute that money down below to the people who needed it most. So, I mean, when you use that argument, well, this group has moved away from black, it's still a black man that I listen to, a man in the street, an activist that I've marched with and saw him, went to a funeral with, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's still a man of color who I'm listening to, and his organizations and people.
It's really funny to see you say that, though, as someone who I assume is completely anti-identity politics, and that's what you're going with here. I mean, would you follow the word of Ben Carson, of Tim Scott?
Absolutely,
I mean, the idea that you're listening to him because he's black. I mean,
But you say that they're racist and they have racist tendencies, right? Well, that's why
they're trying to. Okay, so maybe we should go backwards a little bit here.
Yeah, and like this is one of those things. I really wish a lot of them would learn about the groups before they start talking about them. When you've got Jimmy Dore, who goes on a show and is frequently like, you know, they seem to like a lot of the same things we like. They're fighting for the same things as us, you know. They don't like the rich elites being in control of everything. They don't like big government trying to strangle us with all their, like, you know, beliefs and stuff like that. They don't like taxation without representation. They're multicultural. There's different races. There's different ethnicities. Come on now. These guys, we could be on the same team. Can you look into the Boogaloo Boys and what they actually believe and what the idea of the upcoming war, the civil war that they all think is about to happen, and how there's a pretty large section of them that believe it's going to be a race war, and that they're actually preparing for a race war by training and arming themselves for said race war. It actually, some of it overlaps with the Turner Diaries, and I know a lot of it is meme. But there's that problem with memes online, you know, where we kind of skirt the line between which is and which isn't a meme, and how much of this is actually being taken seriously. And it looks like there is a lot of them that are becoming heavily armed and going to marches and giving rallies and speeches. The Turner Diaries, I don't know. It's maybe just not the kind of people we should be allying ourselves with.
The Boogaloo Boys have a very distinct strategy in how they basically say they're going to support Black Lives Matter movements and show up down there with guns, even though nobody else down there at most of these rallies, including Black Lives Matter protesters, comes armed. And they know that they go down there to escalate. They say they support these movements basically so they could go down there and escalate, because at the end of the day, what they want, it's right in the name, they want a civil war. They want a second civil war. And a lot of them specifically state, I mean, what else does a civil war mean in this country but a race war? I mean, we saw what happened.
I don't think that's true, though. I don't think that's true. I really don't believe that's true. And I think you need to talk to more of these people, whatnot, to find out a little bit more, because you're going off hearsay when you've never even talked to.
Right, so you could do the anecdote, Andy. You could talk to just a handful of Boogaloo Boys, and yes, you will find people in the organization who will, like, I'm sure, categorically be like, I do not endorse this, I am not for this, I do not want a race war, I do not, it's not my game, man, I'm just here for the costumes, I want to wear a Hawaiian shirt and have an AK, you know, there's not a lot of clubs that do both of these at the same time. Okay, so that's just, come on. I like the aesthetics. But there is also a lot of them who are going to say that I am looking forward to an upcoming race war in which, you know, the superiority of blah, 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 Turner Dryers, let's go on with this. So there's going to be some overlap. There's enough overlap that it's of a concern to a variety of different groups. I think even the Southern, I'm going to look it up. I think the Southern Poverty Law Center has an article in the Boogaloo Boys.
To these people in this group. And even if they tell you that, that still might not be true, but you're coming from a place that where you're finding stuff.
Wait, this is the same guy. This is Craig Pasta Jardula. All right, hold on. It still isn't clear where the virus came from. However, it's pretty clear that the virus isn't going away anytime soon. We should shift our focus onto building our immune system and alternative medicines to fight this virus. Trying to eradicate the invisible enemy hasn't worked. Building our immune systems and alternative medicine? Okay, well that's a couple red flags right there.
On social media to put that into perspective. That's how all Boogaloo Boys are. And when you go back to what you said about Boogaloo Boys are different over here than they are different over there, they're a decentralized group. You know, I asked a ton of questions because I wanted to make sure that where I was coming from, I was educated and I knew about these guys. And the Boogaloo Boys in Washington don't talk to them.
Well, what do you know? The Southern Poverty Law Center does have multiple articles on them. Among the most visible ideological adherents at the state capitol protests after January 6th at Richmond, Virginia on January 18th for the pro-Second Amendment rallies were people involved with the Boogaloo Boys movement, easily recognizable because of the Hawaiian shirt themed, the masks with their weapons, signatures of Boogaloo followers. The shirts are a reference to the Big Lau, in which the adaptation of the word Boogaloo. Following the insurrection of the U.S. Capitol resulted in 5 deaths. 6 now. Large swaths of American right have continued to falsely claim that former President Trump won the election. Right-wing protests were also slated for state capitals the weekend of January 17th. However, as a result of the events of Jan 6, state capitals and U.S. capitals are under heightened security, and tech companies have finally platformed a number of groups, individuals, and even whole social media apps where the conspiracies would lobby. Let's see. Boogaloo Boys participated in the rally in Richmond, distinct in their Hawaiian shirts, other Hawaiian-themed clothing and gear, but also a few sported Black Lives Matter patches and other rainbow flag patches in the alleged support of the Black Lives Matter movement and LGBTQ rights. It's unclear how much of the support is genuine, how much is simply politically opportunism, and how much of the movement attempts to muddy ideological boundaries in order to get a triage with their image and draw on more adherents. The threat that binds Boogaloo adherents and their belief in the country is headed towards a civil war. That mass civil conflict of this kind is the only way for the country to right its path. These anti-government beliefs have found appeal beyond the movement's racist roots, making it adaptable and easily spread. This is where things become more dangerous. So if it splinters away from its racist origins, and then you've got this sentiment that everyone is feeling, and it's a growing sentiment. I mean, alienation is not slowing down, it's becoming worse. So you've got people that are going to get rooted into this. All Boogaloo adherents share anti-government beliefs, hold especially deep animus towards members of law enforcement, anti-government and far-right groups. Well, see, this is where you might find some overlap with Antifa. Anti-government and far-right groups have historically deemed local police members and federal law enforcement agencies amongst their primary enemies. They also see police as the most obvious manifestation of the supposed tyrannical state. So this is where I think someone like Jimmy Dore would have latched onto and been like, this is the part we can both agree upon. They're also entirely opposed to firearm regulations, which members of law enforcement are tasked with implementing. So, like, is it all firearms? Is it like the pure ANCAP dream? Can you have nukes? Can you have tactical nukes? What about, okay, tactical nukes is obviously a meme. Goes a little far. No one's going to buy a tactical nuke. It's expensive. You probably need a large amount of equipment. Scientists, especially, who would have information beyond the realm I could ever. But what about, like, missiles? Like a few missiles. Not just, like, you know, a single missile. Not like a bazooka or anything like that. Like, what about one of those cool-looking machines that have, like, the rectangle pivots, and then they all fire one after the other. I'm sure there's some veterans in here who can fill me in. They're like, Lance, you're just thinking of video game things, But what about some of that, Have you ever talked to a Boogaloo boy? How could you know? That's true, Dark Puppy. That's true. I haven't done my research. I've only read these reports. I have not had a Boogaloo boy on the show. But that would be a fun arc, eh? Everyone's like, Lance, don't have Lauren Southern on your show. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to listen to any of you. And then it's like, okay, don't have a Boogaloo boy on your show. Wait. At what point do we call bullshit? Or are we going to continue to let the government and Big Pharma pump us up with experimental vaccines and boosters? We need to make a stance now before it's too late. There are alternative treatments for COVID-19. This is from the Wall Street Journal. This was always part of the cards. This is like, is he actually, why are people thinking this is new? Right from the get-go, when they're like, in record time, we have developed vaccines and we think they're going to be effective. We're going to start human trials soon. The whole process is going to be fast-tracked. Once they came out with the results, they were like, this is amazing. We have some vaccines now that are 96% effective against the current versions of COVID. There will be variants, there will be mutations, and the longer we let the population continue to go unvaccinated, the global population, as in we all need to work together to do this kind of thing, population, right? As long as we've got these weird timelines where some of the poorest nations won't be vaccinated until 2023, then that gives us a lot of time to invent these new ones. The Delta, now it's the Delta Plus. Like I've said, it's like the Street Fighter way of naming things. Like what was up with Street Fighter? Capcom. You couldn't ever go from like Street Fighter 1 to 2 to 3. That would have made so much more sense. But it's like, here's Street Fighter 2. Here's Street Fighter 2 Turbo Edition. Here's Super Street Fighter 2. Here's Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Edition. Here's Super Street Fighter 2 The New Challengers. Here's like, there was so many alternate spin-offs. And then finally, it's like Street Fighter 3 comes along. And then there was so many versions of Street Fighter 3. And there was Street Fighter Alpha. It was like it was still Street Fighter, but it had other Street Fighter characters in it. So you're like, okay, let's play Street Fighter Alpha now. Well, where does this fall in the canon? Well, there's some characters from Final Fight in that one, so they kind of cross over and it's all fun and silly. Oh, and hey, you like crossovers? How about Capcom versus Street Fighter versus X-Men versus all of them? We got them all, baby. Anyways, that's what's happening right now with COVID and all the different COVID variations, because right now we've got the Delta Plus, which is getting very scary, but there's also the Lambda. The Lambda is starting to worry me. And there's going to be, like, when Sigma comes along, everyone's going to be like, that's fucking hilarious. Yeah, Sigma, grind, get the mindset. Omega. The point is that it's not a surprise that we're going to need booster shots. In fact, that shouldn't be scary to anyone. That should be reassuring. That should make you happy and warm and fuzzy that, like, we've come so far in our technology that even though these scary mutations come along and we're like, oh no, shit, it's the Omega, it's the Ligma, we have the ability to adapt so rapidly that we can make a vaccine that will fix that. What should be scary to you is the pharmaceutical companies that are doing this are going to continue to print cash. So much cash. If that's what scares you, not the technology, not the scientists, not the brilliant minds, not the nurses. God, the nurses who work so tirelessly to look after people. All those people working so hard to keep us all alive. They are amazing human beings. They deserve your love, your respect, your socially distanced hugs. I was about to say hugs, but maybe keep it a little bit away. But it's the companies, the corporations. They're the ones that you should be like, well, we should probably nationalize these because it's going wild. It's getting out of control. But this is a good thing. This is a good thing that we can adapt. We should be happy about this, not terrified. These companies only want one thing, and I know a lot of you think I'm talking about sex. I'm not talking about sex. By the way, Matt's doing really good, just in the sense that I don't, like, there's so many points where Matt could just be like, okay, well, you have no idea what you're talking about, and you're talking out of your ass. This is less of a debate and more of the letting the person kind of dig their own metaphorical, figurative, Roblox, grave.
The Boogaloo Boys in Michigan, and at the end of the day, they don't want a civil war. And in fact, that's what the reason why I talk to them at. Real second, I'll let you speak. The reason why I do talk to people like that, I will talk to Proud Boys, and I'll talk to Boogaloo Boys, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, all these assholes, right? Whatever, all these groups and stuff like that, because I believe they are being pushed by the elites to start a color revolution. And at the end of the day, I don't believe that people like Magnus want a civil war. Now, you might find a Boogaloo Boy in Washington who does want a civil war, but the reason why I talk to these people is because I don't want a civil war. And I think it's stupid when we're fighting each other in the streets with people who have little power, while the people who do have power at top control the narrative. Sorry for cutting you off, brother. Go ahead.
No, I was cutting you off, so it's all good. I mean, again, I would go back to my original point, was that if you don't want a race war, then why are you part of a group who has a name that literally comes from wanting a second civil war or race war? That's where it comes from.
No, Boogaloo Boys come from the movie Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, and why do you think they picked that name? Like, what in that movie?
Please educate me. I saw the movie 3 times in the movie theater. I'm 48 years old. I was a breaker, man. I used to.
Yeah, because there's nothing in the movie. There's no like deep meaning behind this. In 4chan, they basically, in a pro-gun forum on 4chan a couple of years ago, they basically started spreading a meme where if they wanted a second civil war, they joked by calling it Civil War II Electric Boogaloo. And that's where they got the name Boogaloo Boys. It's as simple as that. Like, you see in the movie, what in the movie directly correlates to anything that they do or espouse? It makes no sense without that context that it came from 4chan, from that meme, Civil War II, Electric Boogaloo. Yeah. To say you don't want a civil war and be a Boogaloo Boy, the way you prove that is by not being.
Yeah, but that's because what one schmuck said, and when you talk to Magnus and you talk to other people there, they try to root out anybody who's a racist. They don't want them in their organization. They're very clear about what they do and what they want to do, and that's to take out the elites and the government that's controlling everybody. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, we might not agree on a lot of things, but I think you're taking one little comment and saying that's everything that represents the whole groups. I just asked you as a leftist, are you going to agree with everything the Democratic Party says? And of course you're not going to say that. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have differences of opinion. So I think that the fact that you're kind of stamping this on this whole group without even talking to a lot of them and not even getting to know them is just inaccurate and wrong. But
the thing is, you wouldn't say that about other organizations that already have pretty shady backgrounds, right? Like, you wouldn't say like, well, have you spoken to every member of the KKK? And I'm not equating the Boogaloo Boys to the KKK. They're not the same. One is obviously incredibly much more racist. It's an actual terrorist organization. I'm just saying, you wouldn't say that, like, as in you haven't spoken to enough of them yet, right? Like, you haven't had enough conversations. What was the write-up that I read very quickly? That was a summary for anyone who doesn't know. They're a militia movement of far-right gun nuts formed in 2019 that are trying to overthrow the government and then spark a second American Civil War. They can be described as a bizarre combination of white supremacists, yippies, hipsters, and they revel in their own absurdities. The name is a reference to the racist dog whistle Boogaloo. They become infamous for their involvement in the George Floyd protests, trying to inflame an already burning hot situation. Now, Boogaloo was something that what's his face? Tim Pool loved playing with that. Tim Pool loves flirting with the alt-right and the 4chan memes. Like, he was all over the milk and the OK symbol and stuff like that too. That's
just my personal opinion. I hear where you're coming from, but I just disagree strongly with you.
Have you talked to every member of the alt-right to know that they are racists?
No.
I mean, would you say
what do you consider alt-right though? I mean yeah.
Baked Alaska, Richard Spencer, Jack Posobiec, Mike Cernovich. I mean, would you say that those guys espouse racist views, or would you say that they are on our side?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know any of them personally. I have a little experience with Jack Posobiec, you know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to speak for, what they are or what they represent. And once again, to me, and I'm going to say this again, a person with no power who's a racist is not half as worth paying attention to than a person with power who puts in racist policies.
That's true, but I can't really speak for the Americans on that part. But yeah, Boogaloo Boys are in Canada. That is true. Boogaloo Boys and Proud Boys. Proud Boys, too. Ain't no Proud Boys up in Canada. They're considered terrorists.
That is the issue. And let me be honest with you, too, as well. Would you say that anybody who wants to build a wall is racist?
Why does anyone defend Jack Posobiec, by the way? Like, isn't he, like, pretty well known? Like, he's pretty much the threshold, Like, that's... You have to be able to accept that guy's a white nationalist on some degree. Like, that he believes in the superiority of the white race. He's got so many tweets. So many tweets with like a lot of shit in them where you're like, yeah, that he's not memeing. You don't meme those kind of things.
Racist.
Well, yeah.
See, that's where we disagree.
if you're chanting "build a wall" along with Donald Trump, which we all know exactly specifically what that means. I mean, there's no if ands. Now, if you're saying that I think all people who believe that are evil, no, there's obviously a lot of normal, everyday people who just aren't in the political bubble who became fans of Donald Trump through their own social circles and might not even completely understand what they're saying and what they're espousing and what this all means. What they're actually saying.
Do you understand what they're all saying and espousing?
Because I understand what they're all saying, but the question is whether they understand what they're saying. I don't think
because we have a different perspective, right? Like, because for instance, like my uncle, right, who is, he's a big Donald Trump supporter, right? He thinks that we should build a wall because he thinks that we can only take care of so many people that are in the United States, and he also has this misled opinion that an undocumented worker, which he would call an illegal immigrant, I would tell him all the time, it's an undocumented worker, not a legal immigrant, because language does matter, that they're taking away benefits from a veteran that a veteran should get. So do I think that's racist that they feel that way? No, I think a lot of people, if everybody was starving in the village and they would have their own children, they'd feed their own children first before they fed the rest of the village. You know what I'm saying? That's the mentality they have. They're wrong, but that doesn't make them racist. You know what I'm saying?
I would say it certainly does make them racist. Now, whether they want to be racist or they realize they're being racist, that's a completely another question. But actions speak louder than words, and what they're saying and what they're doing are, they're saying they don't want the other, in this case, immigrants from Mexico escaping violence in Central America, Latin America. They don't want them coming in because they think that they're going to take something from them or take something from more deserving Americans, which is just not the case because, as you know, these are the same people who say that America could do anything. There's nothing we can't handle. But apparently we can't handle a couple of brown people coming in and making sure that they get set up and escape certain death in their own country. Okay. I mean, the idea
which we're responsible for, by the way. You know what I'm saying? We're responsible. Of course. Yeah, we don't. That's what we never talk about, and that's what bothers me.
Oh, we don't disagree on that at all.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question when you're ready. So, good.
No, but the idea that that's not racist, maybe your uncle is coming from a good place and doesn't realize he's being racist, but that certainly doesn't mean you're not being racist.
Okay, so let me ask this question. Let's just say, for argument's sake, he is racist. Who's more dangerous, that person there or Joe Biden, who might be all nice and fuzzy and lovey right now? He might have seen religion. He wrote the 1994 crime bill, which is racist as hell. Who's more dangerous? Who's more dangerous? AOC, who says I'll defer to the caucus leadership when it comes to Venezuela, or that dude who's just sitting once again with the Trump hat?
As a single person, all right, I'm going to grant the Convo couch this. As a single person, Joe Biden probably has done more damage, all right, to black Americans through the 1994 crime bill than the individual racist, who's an outward racist that he's speaking about. He isn't really talking about institutional racism, though. He's not talking about systemic racism. He's talking about the one person. This is where, like, I usually kind of start to see a bit of the cartoonish nature of the way they speak about these kind of things. Because they usually speak about them as if it's like, and he did this to us. And you're like, well, he was one of many. It's like, the problem with systemic racism or institutional racism in sociology, they're kind of interchangeable, is that people think that they're not even racist when they're a part of it. People think that, like, you might have this concept that you expect every single person who's part of a racist system to consistently be racist. They just run around screaming the N-word at each other, and that's just what they do day in, day out. But that's not the way systemic racism works. It can be embedded within the system itself, and then that can bring out tropes and other things that you didn't even know existed within you. But in this one particular instance, yes. Okay, fine. I don't think that's what Matt Binder is talking about, though. This seems like a straw binder, kind of. Because at the end of the day, really, is this guy proposing, Craig Pasta Jarbdullah, that this one person is going to cause as much damage as the president of the United States? No. The president of the United States has much more power than one person. What I'm sure Matt Binder's worried about is the collectivization of these people. Hey, thanks, Rhinestone. Appreciate for the gift one. Is the collectivization of these people, that there's going to be a whole bunch of them grouping together and influencing other people, and then they get together and they influence more people, and that people do this almost exclusively on the internet at first, that it blows up into IRL shit, and then you've got insurrections at the Capitol. That's kind of the idea. And do you want to partner with those people with these goals along the way? Do you want to be a part of this weird system? Because hopefully not.
On drinking beer using the N-word, which person is more dangerous? And which person can we change more?
Oh, right. I first of all, I just want to put up front, I never said one was more dangerous than the other.
Oh, I'm saying that. I'm saying
okay,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
Of course, the people empowered are more dangerous.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that does not mean you need to ally with people who specifically want the opposite of what your end goal is. I mean, they're going to stab you in the back eventually.
But that's what you're saying. We don't know that, right?
Oh, we know that.
No, we don't. Because let me tell you something. Let me ask you a question. All right, let me ask you a question. What fuels racism? What caused racism? Particularly in America, what really fuels and makes a racist person racist? Aside from the fact that he's been taught that way, what elevates a person to be more racist?
Oh, and for most people, what makes someone more racist is the need for a scapegoat to explain their own, their own situation, whether it's poverty or some sort of negative thing that happened in their life. That's usually how people fall down the white supremacist rabbit hole. That's usually how white supremacist organizations bring mostly young white men into their movement.
That's a really, really tough question to answer. Can you imagine someone asking that to you, just like flat out? Hold on, let me see if I can get some music here. No, not that. All right, Lance, explain now, what causes racism? Well, how much time do I have? Holy fuck, so there's a lot of factors, obviously. I mean, no one is innately born racist. We have to be taught that as a concept, and it's like, Lance, 1 minute remains. How does racism get formed? It's like, fuck. Well, okay, there's going to be a lot of different conditions. There's also socioeconomic conditions. There's historical precedents. There's the ways in which society is stratified. There's obviously the fact that we are so overworked, and social media as well is playing a very large. It's promoting conspiracy theories at the same time. It's like, time over, Lance. Uh-oh, shit. Uh-oh, yeah. Did you win? No, doesn't feel like it, or maybe I can't find the right button. And just like that, Lance couldn't figure out racism. He couldn't solve it. And he's a racist because of it. So why would you ask someone that question? That's such a very vast question to ask.
They basically see.
You know what would have been a power move for Matt Binder to have said? Me. 'Tis me, the great creator of races.
Downtrodden, down on their luck, economically
there you go.
Hurt people, and they go, hey, you know who is the person who's responsible for that? It's the Mexicans, it's the Muslims,
okay,
it's the black people,
cool.
And that's where that comes from.
Let me. All right, so I think we're somewhat on this similar page. Whatnot. I believe all forms of existing bigotry are hyperinflated at times of economic distress. In other words, you strip people of their resources, they become more likely to blame somebody who doesn't look like them, right? Like the reason why I'm poor is because that black person across the street, they get, college education that I have to pay for. You're telling me that I'm privileged right now, and when I'm almost one paycheck from being out in the streets. So I believe, and you look at a lot of these groups like the KKK that you once talked about, a lot of these people who go into these groups are just economically stressed. So in other words, if we had a system where, well, I mean, that's just my personal opinion. You can disagree. But if we had a system where we relieved and we took away so much economic stress, because everybody's like, they're stressed out.
Okay, so the theory being proposed, and I don't have an answer to it, I'm going to look it up right now, is that poverty precedes indoctrination into extreme hate groups. So I'm going to have to look that up. Oh, we have the answer. What's the answer? What causes racism? No. I don't need further embarrassment of how I didn't get it right. So hold on.
They're one paycheck from being out in the street. We remove that entity, you know what I'm saying? Now we start breaking bread together, we start talking together, you know what I'm saying? If people are on a good economic system, right, and they can relax a little bit more, they don't have to worry about how they're going to pay rent or that car payment and stuff. Now the black man, his daughter goes to school with the white man, they're forced and they're a lot more relaxed and they can talk to each other and build bridges and build bonds. I mean, would you not agree that we do have a mentality from the elites up there that is divide and conquered, keep everybody fighting with each other so they can run off with all the resources?
This seems like a bit of a class reductionism, if you ask me, but I'm trying to find out what are the main causes of indoctrination in the background, so you'll have to give me a second here.
I mean, sure, there is that somewhat to an extent, but the idea that there's not people who actually just are straight up racist.
Sorry,
I
Ashley.
mean, where do you think these, where do you think these movement builders are? Like, these aren't people who are just economically downtrodden. These are the people who actually deep down believe that Black people are inferior, that Mexicans are inferior, that Muslims are inferior. Like, the idea that that all racism is just economically motivated. I mean, we've seen that.
I think it's a major motivation thing, the major factor. I don't want to say there's not more to it. It's the major. I'm sorry for interrupting again, brother.
No. For people who, like I was talking about before, there are people who really aren't that politically active, and they are in social circles, depending on where they grew up, how they grew up. And when I mean where, I mean socially, economically, and also location-wise. And they are maybe, just like I was talking about before, someone like your uncle who may be coming from a good-hearted place, not realizing that the views they're espousing are racist. Now, those people, I can say, probably do fall for the white supremacist goal of scapegoating Mexicans, Muslims, Black people in order to bring people over to their side. Sure, I'll give you that. But there are a lot of people who also are true believers in white supremacist ideology. I mean, who's convincing these people who are falling for the scapegoat strategy? It's the true believers. I mean, we see all the time white people are willing to vote against their own interests in order to hurt people who they view as lower than them. I mean, there's a whole movement on the right that literally believes that Black people are just born inferior to white people. They have a lower IQ. There's an entire pseudoscience that completely revolves around it, that people like Tucker Carlson have people like Charles Murray on his show to espouse that view. I mean, there's like Charles Murray and Tucker Carlson are not the downtrodden, economically hurt white man. I mean, These are guys who are true believers and really do deep down in their heart believe that white people are superior to everybody else.
Okay.
I mean, I don't, there's always going to be that.
And I think a lot of it is spitballing and assuming that these people are this way, where I think a lot of people have issues and it could be changed and whatnot. And well, here's my question to you. If it's a flat-out racist, should we not talk to that person? I mean, I'm kind of getting the sense that you didn't have a problem with us talking or platforming Magnus. Your problem was that we didn't push back enough in certain areas, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Okay.
And that's always that's
My problem was that you didn't do any research beforehand, and you got called out for it. You know, if everyone's seen that I think Rob Weber is his name, he did an interview, and then he actually asked Jimmy Dore, he's like, did you know anything about the Boogaloo Boys before you brought them on? Had you studied their ideology? Did you understand where the word comes from? Do you understand kind of the thesis behind a lot of it, the upcoming Civil War stuff? And he was like, honestly, no. We just knew that we had seen him at a rally. He said that he was against, like, you know, a government tyranny, elites. He wanted to unite. Didn't matter to him if people were of different races or different sexualities. That wasn't important to him.
But let's talk about the racist person.
On my show, I've actually had Caitlin Bennett, the Kent State gun girl, on my show. I have a number of right-wingers on my show previously. We talked about numerous issues, and I...
What? I didn't know you had the gun girl on. Oh, wow. I got to check that one out.
Pushed back super hard. It was more, like I said, it was a more debate. I wouldn't call any of them my friends, but they came on the show. I said the same thing that I said to you at the beginning. I always respect anyone who engages, and I will engage with anyone who wants to, anytime, anywhere.
Okay. So what about a racist, though? A racist person? Should we not talk to that person, or should we talk to that person?
I would say Caitlin Bennett is a racist, and I had her on my show.
Should I talk to David Duke? Should I have David Duke on my show?
I mean, I would ask you, what would you be looking to get out of that conversation with David Duke?
Well, I would push back against his ideology of hate and say, hey, man, I think you're wrong over here, and what drives that hate, and try to figure out where he's coming from. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I look at a person like Daryl Davis, right? The black man, the jazz musician who's taken the actual Ku Klux Klan outfits from them, and he takes them and he keeps them as a souvenir because he was able to talk to this racist and convince him that his ways were wrong and change his ways. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just curious to your thoughts about who we should actually talk about and who we shouldn't talk to.
Well, what you want to do on your own personal time, like that individual spoke with members of the KKK and had heart-to-hearts, and but he wasn't putting them on air and saying, "Oh yeah, I agree with you. I agree. Oh, you're basically a leftist," and showing a bunch of viewers, hundreds of people in case of other YouTubers, probably multiple thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, that hey, this
all lowercase, everything.
I mean,
okay,
to me, that's the difference.
Okay, I'll fix everything as we go along. Soon we'll have all the same emotes as every other platform.
Friendly with them. I don't have a problem with that. If you're going to have them on your show and show people that their ideology and not pick apart their ideology and show that, hey, we could actually just let this slide, no big deal, work with them. That's a problem to me. Again, if you're going to have them on the show to pick apart their ideology and try to get them to come to your side, that's totally cool. Have that debate. But if it's just, a friendly chit chat, then I do that off the air.
I think that's where we would differ, because if you were to have Magnus on a show, you're going to have to, you'd be actually telling him that his ideology is different than what he's saying it is to you. So, I mean, that's where it would, because I think we all ask, we say, what are you for? Are you for this? You for that?
Well, Magnus Panvidia called himself an ANCAP. I've seen some of his tweets and some of his videos previously. He's an ANCAP. I mean, the idea that he's never said he is, you could just look it up. I can find audio.
I get you, but once we get, I don't want to go down that conversation again. You call yourself a leftist. You're not going to agree with every single thing a Democrat says or a leftist says. You're going to have different opinions in different areas where you're going to just not agree. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But you know,
I would say
I think you put people in boxes too much. Like you put, you know what I'm saying? Like this is them. It's kind of like trying to put somebody like me in a box where
This is the weirdest goalpost right now. This is just like pivoting in every single direction.
I have different opinions. I'm all over the place when it comes to everything. I consider myself a leftist libertarian because to me the most important things are civil liberties, elections, freedom of speech. You know what I'm saying? But you might not call yourself
leftist libertarian. You gotta be careful when you see that one. So if you refresh the Serfs.tv chat, it should have that mod check, but as a Ben Shapiro in it there now. That should work, I think. Hopefully, I don't know. I don't know how long these things take to begin becoming active. Anyways, of the 46 minutes of this 2-hour conversation that we watched, I would say very good job by Matt Binder. Obviously, I am somewhat biased because I love Matt and I think he's an awesome person. But I think just in terms of the conversation, there's not really any blood. This isn't really like a blood debate. It's more just kind of like, it seems more like a personal responsibility conversation. You know, more of like, if you're going to talk about these kind of things, you should probably know a little bit more about what you're talking about. I happen to do know a little bit about what I'm talking about, so I'm going to just have a conversation in relation to that, you know? Do you want movies and Serfs watching the movies? So then come over to the new channels. It's the Serfs Cinema. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Can you do the thing, you know, that thumbs up and comment and all those things that help us out in the algorithm that controls every aspect of our lives? Also, if you happen to have a Facebook account, can you delete it? Like just delete it. You should probably delete your Facebook account because it's not a great company. But hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, I understand. And could you also go to facebook.com/thesurftimes then and give us a little like and a follow. We're just trying to push back against the fact that people like Ben Shapiro happen to dominate the platform entirely. And when everyone asks why do older generations believe the things they believe, one of the problems is the majority of them on social media use Facebook. So to counter that, we're just going to be on there too now. Also, if you happen to have a union or a worker co-op or even a leftist project, podcast, website, Zoom, MySpace, it doesn't matter. We will advertise it for free on this channel. All you got to do is go to weareserfs.com and use the forms that we got there, weareserfs.com. Thanks, everybody.
To our gods, Tigro and Payton El Jus, we pray to you, our sky daddies, to keep us safe from harm. To our monarchs, Tom Spiker and the Tim Caucus, we shall humbly clean your golden toilets in your spatial palaces. To our lords, Ultra Wolf, Evan Nudie, Trevor R., Alexander Thaler, Ryan Lubin, and Jeff Lamb, we are eternally grateful for this small segment of land for us to toil and work. To our knights, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Ants are still running the world, Coulter Smith, Val 9000, Jenna Tall, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Ultimondi, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Saren 42, Chronic to Hemphog, Catherine, Bone Jenny, Radical Maniac, Ramona Costa, Jimmy Bignuts, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Jopi, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our glasses, we raise our swords, and we salute you, our friends. And to Lance, you are the wind beneath my wings.